All right, thanks for joining everybody. We're going to get started. Can folks hear me okay?
Mhm.
All right. And can you see my screen all right?
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, so we are going to get our special office hours kicked off here. I'm recording this session as well, just so folks can have this as future reference. We're welcoming today a very special guest for us today. We have Amber Bodette and Lisa Baker with us from Ascend Mental Wellness. I'd like to welcome them both. They're going to be speaking to us today about some services that they offer through their organization, residential services, and various other services that they have for Warren and Washington counties. And we look forward to hearing what they have to talk about. So I'd like to welcome them both and thank them for what they have to talk about. So I'm going to turn it over to Amber. Amber, I'm going to stop share and kick it over to you. And
Okay.
as always, if folks have questions along the way, feel free to ask. We have the chat function as well. All right, Amber, here we are.
All right. Thanks, everybody. So Lisa Baker and myself wanted to come on here because we've been doing kind of a little bit of a residential SPOA tour um, with different agencies. So what we wanted to do today is talk to you about our residential services at Ascend Mental Wellness. That's for Warren and Washington counties. A lot of the names on here do look familiar that I'm seeing. So we wanted to go over it. I'm going to pull up a SPOA so we can go through the programs, what the programs offer, the individuals that are candidates for our programs. We're also going to go over what we need to accompany the SPOA. So we're going to kind of go through it line by line. We're going to start with Lisa Baker's programs. And then on the SPOA, there's only one supportive residential program I'll be going over with you guys today. When we're done looking at the SPOA, I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about coordinated entry and what that is, and our different residential programs that utilize that list to pull from to fill our vacancies. So I'm Amber Boda. I am the director for supportive residential and also Lemurs and outreach. And I have with me Lisa Baker.
And I'm the director for restorative residential services.
So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to pull over the SPOA so we can get started. And again, we'll be starting with Lisa's programs. Those are for the highest needs individuals. Can everybody see the SPOA?
It's just blank.
It's just white right now.
Wait, it's white? Like the SPOA is white?
It's just a white
like a white
screen.
piece of paper.
Okay, hang on. Let me try this again. I just even tried this. Let me stop sharing. And let me try sharing again. Here. Why is that white? Okay, let me try this. Oh, I think I might have fixed it. Hang on. Share it. Now.
There. Okay. Well, there we go.
There,
Yay? Yes?
Yeah, here we
Yep.
are.
Okay, perfect.
do you want to zoom in on it a little bit just because it's super small right now? There you go.
Is that
Awesome.
better?
Yes,
Okay.
at least on my end.
How does it look for everybody else?
Looks great.
Okay, good.
All right, so at the very top, you're going to do the same information for everyone. You're going to have the name of the person you're referring, the date that you're doing the referral, and then it's really important for us to have their current status. Are they currently inpatient somewhere? Are they at home? Are they in a rehab? Are they homeless? If they're homeless, hopefully you have an idea of how we can catch them, whether they're at, Open Door, SOS, something like that, or just kind of floating around. You're going to put your contact information under the person making referral, agency, phone number, fax number. That way we can get in touch with you if we have any questions, and vice versa. So the SPOA is sectioned off by program, essentially. If you're familiar with the SPOA of 2023, it was not sectioned off, so it was a little confusing, and some people were doing extra work for programs that didn't need all the supporting documentation, and then other people weren't doing enough. So hopefully this is a little bit more streamlined for everybody. We implemented this one at the beginning of the year, so if you got to use it, hopefully it works well. So from our most supportive program, our most intensive hands-on programs, and then to our more independent programs. That's how it's listed on the SPOA as well. So the first program there, it's under restorative. We refer to these programs as restorative because we're billing Medicaid for restorative services. Basically, that means everybody in these programs need to have Medicaid. If they don't have Medicaid, they're paying out of pocket for it, and it's an exorbitant amount of money, and it's just not worth it. In my mind, my penny pinching mind. So restorative services, there's 11 of them, and we have to make sure that each person coming into our programs has at least 4 needs within those restorative services. So it can be assertiveness, med management, parenting, rehabilitative counseling, socialization, health services, community rehab stuff. So we need to be able to find 4 of those services, and then we can really serve that person. The first level we can serve them in is our community residence. So that's essentially our group homes. We have 2 of them. There's one in Glens Falls and there's one in Hudson Falls. And those are big Victorian houses with 12 people in one, 13 in another. It's staffed 24/7. And it's all awake staff, so our overnights are awake as well. And those are the people who really need help a lot of times learning how to manage their ADLs a lot of times. So we see a lot of referrals coming from state psych centers, longer inpatient stays, incarceration, a ton of transitional age youth right now coming in that most likely were in some kind of institutional setting or foster care. And those are the people who really, maybe don't know how to cook in a traditional kitchen. They might not know how to do their laundry. Those are some of the skills that we're building on. The biggest service that restorative does through all of my programming is medication management. So it's medication training. We're not med certified. We don't administer meds or pass meds. We teach people what their meds are and how to take them. That way, the whole goal of restorative is to get them to a place that they can go into the community and manage on their own or with very little support, like maybe some care management support here and there. So I'll give you an example of the person who comes into the CRs and they don't know how to cook. So at the CRs, we're standing next to them, teaching them how to cook. It could even be microwavable meals that we're teaching them how to do. If they are maintaining the bedroom that they share, they're doing all right symptomatically, and they really don't need that super hands-on staff support, we would refer them to the next level of programming, which is a little less supportive and a little bit more independent, and that would be our community living apartment program. Under that program, you will see that there is Maple Street Apartments or satellite apartments. So it's the same program, just 2 like sub-levels within that program. Maple Street Apartments is a apartment building on Maple Street in Hudson Falls. We have 9 apartments in there. We can house 14 individuals. There's only 4 singles in there, and the rest are doubles. They're big apartments. So whereas in the CRs, you had staff kind of right in their living room, right in their kitchen, hanging out with them, at Maple Street, they have their apartment upstairs and the staff are housed in an office downstairs. And those
when you're close that much, she's not touching the litter, but
those clients needing help within their apartments can either call down and get the staff to come up to their apartment, or they can come down and ring the doorbell and come into the office. So it's still the same restorative services we're working on. It's maybe at a different level though. So that person that was learning how to cook at the CRs, now they're at Maple Street. They have to figure out, because at the CRs we provide a lot of the food to them. At Maple Street, we don't provide any food because they have their own kitchen, they have their own apartment to feed themselves in. So they've learned how to cook in the CRs. Maybe now at Maple Street they need to learn how to grocery shop. So we do 2 to 3 grocery trips a week, and so the staff assigned to them can go with them and go through the grocery store and teach them what to look at, where items are, how to check out at self-checkout, how to bag their items, then get them back to their apartment. Once they don't need that on-site support from staff, we would kick them out into our satellite apartments. So our satellite apartments are apartments that are either rented or owned by the agency. So I hold all the leases for those apartments. They're not the client's apartment. We furnish them, and we just kind of filter people in and out of those apartments as needed. So again, it's the same restorative services we're working on, just a different level of it. So at the CRs, that person learned how to cook. At Maple Street, they learned how to grocery shop. Now in satellite, we don't provide any transportation. So now in satellite, they have to figure out how to budget taking the bus to the grocery store, taking a cab to the grocery store. So not only do they have to figure out how to buy their own food, but they also have to figure out how to do that on a budget that lets them transport themselves back and forth to the grocery store. And the staff are also obviously not on site, being in satellite. So the staff are going out to their apartments. So if they do need any kind of support when the staff aren't there, then they are picking up the phone and they're calling the Maple Street building. That is staffed 24/7 for any kind of assistance. So like I said, all of these people being referred need Medicaid for the group home and for Maple Street and satellite. The other things that need to be completed to submit a referral would be the referral form itself. So please make sure that you are providing as much detail as possible in that referral form. This is the only information we get on the individual until we meet them. So the more information, the better. Amber scroll, and there's the referral form. So even where we can find them, if they don't have their own phone, if there's somebody that we can reach out to instead. Their diagnoses are a huge thing. It has to be an SMI. Something like generalized anxiety isn't going to be something that we can work with unless they have something else to go along with it. That's considered an SMI. We need, let's see, I'll go right down the checklist. So we need the consent form within the SPOA signed. If that's not signed, then we can't even look at that referral. The SPOA coordinator can't even pass that along to us to assess it.
I want to add here too, this part on the consent where it says the following is a brief description of what I would find most helpful for myself. We really want that to be in the client's words. We know it might be in the care manager's handwriting. That's fine. But we really want to know what the individual is looking for out of the housing that they're applying for. So I just want to point that out as well.
Yep. Then it's the eligibility. It's essentially the functional. Within this referral is also a functional checklist. There's different options to be able to have the person you're referring complete that functional, for you to complete the functional, maybe for a provider to complete that functional. You can certainly complete it yourself and have the person being referred complete it too. This gives us a really good idea of where to start them out in the process. So when we receive referrals, we assess what we see on paper, and then we pass them along to our coordinators of the program we think that they're going to be most suited for a face-to-face interview. Obviously, that face-to-face interview might tell us something completely different than what the referral's telling us, so we can move them to a different program at that point. But that is very important to have that functional filled out, and for it to be accurate and honest. One of the pieces of the functional is how they get along with different people, with other people. Most of my apartment and group home settings, it's groups. It's you're in with a roommate most of the time. So if we have somebody who truly can't get along with other people, then we need to know that, so we're not creating a safety issue, and that we're focusing on trying to get them into some kind of single apartment or bedroom. A copy of a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation or psychosocial assessment completed within the last year. So this is where you're going to prove that the person has an SMI and that it's affecting their daily functioning. If you have a report that says, within the body of it, it says that the patient reported they have bipolar, that doesn't really say anything for us. We need some kind of provider backing on that. The provider can even write in the note that they agree with that diagnosis, or that their symptoms seem to align with that diagnosis. That would be fine. But typically, if you have a provider that you're working with on this SPOA referral, you can ask them for an assessment, a psychosocial assessment, and they can do one, and we'll accept that. Or hospital records are really good for this as well. The authorization for restorative services to be completed by a physician. This has to be signed by an MD. It cannot be signed by an NPP, an NP, a PA. It has to be signed by an MD. And this is a Medicaid rule. So we can't even process this referral unless we have this completed. So my suggestion is that you, as the person completing this referral, fill this form out. So you're going to put the patient or the client's name, their Medicaid number. You're going to check off that initial authorization. And then it says it has to be a face-to-face encounter with an MD that this paper is being signed off on. So it says for initial authorization only, date of required face-to-face meeting. It's a little bit lower, Amber. Yeah, right there. And so you're going to put the date that that appointment was. Now, the community residents and the CLA programs have different timeframes that this form is effective for. The CRs is 6 months. So you're going to put the effective date as the date that that face-to-face encounter was. And then 6 months from that is going to be end date. Then CLA, you're going to put the effective date, same thing, which would be the date that the encounter was. End date is 1 year from that effective date. If those dates aren't completed correctly, I can't take this form. I can't take the referral, which is why it's way easier for you guys to be completing this. And that way you just have the provider signature on the bottom, because the provider's not going to fill in all that on the other information. So if you can do as little or as much as possible, so that way the provider has as little possible to do, it usually works better. If you are unsure what level of housing you think the person would need or would be agreeable to or whatnot, or maybe they're only agreeable to an apartment program, but you really think they need a CR, fill this form out with both of those checked off, and excuse me, then we have our bases covered, and we don't have to go back to that MD saying we interviewed them, we're not going to accept them for the CLA program, but we will for the CR. All right, you want to scroll back up? Copy of a physical completed within the last year. This is this would be really, really nice to have. I will accept the referrals without that as long as there's a physical appointment date that you have set up. It's one of the Medicaid mandates that they have a yearly physical. So them coming in with it is fantastic, but not necessarily needed. Although it is a good time to have that physician's authorization signed is at that yearly physical. And then a copy of a TB screening completed within the last year. So again, another good thing to do at a physical, they have to have a negative TB test. It can be the PPD or it can be a chest x-ray, either one. So if any of those things are missing on this checklist, I will kick the referral back to Linda Wright and say, I can't accept this. And then it'll be Linda hounding you guys for more information or whatever's missing. So that way she can get it back to me and I can properly assess it. So that TB and that physician's authorization is typically the things that slow the process down. We have a week. We give ourselves a week from the time that we receive that referral from the SPOA coordinator to the time that we're sending it along to the coordinators to reach out to the client. So, but you'll see that sometimes it'll take months and months for it to actually get to us because some of those things are missing or filled out incorrectly. Does anybody have questions right now about restorative, about the group home, the CRs, or CLA? Fantastic. That means I did a good job.
Okay, so I'm going to ask again. Does anybody have questions for Lisa? Because I will jump into the scattered site program that's also on the SPOA. So that is, it's still through SPOA. It is a different procedure slightly with what you have to get for documentation. So any questions for Lisa as of right now?
And I will add that this is 18 years or older.
All right, so I'll jump into mine. So if you, when you're looking at the SPOA, what we just reviewed essentially is the first page here. That is where all the restorative services are. Top of the second page, this little bitty part, that is scattered site supported housing. So this is our most independent level of housing at Ascend. So essentially what this program really is, it's mimic after HUD. So the individuals that come into this program have to be able to live independently. They will only get a staff member out to their apartment that's in the community about once a month. And that is really the purpose of that staff member, is to help them maintain their housing. So with scattered site, we do the first month's rent. We also pay the security and we fully furnish the apartment. The lease is between the tenant and the landlord. So it is not between our agency and the landlord. So what that means is that this is essentially, again, having this person be very independent. So they have the lease with the landlord. They have to follow that lease. Our staff will review the lease with them, make sure they understand it, see if they need any help with anything. But really for scattered site, when you are looking at the individuals that you work with, this would really be somebody who is essentially one step away from being able to live fully independently in the community with no support. So for scattered site, we do have a list of landlords that we work with. So we have landlords, we let them know when we have people on our wait list. They'll let us know what apartments are available. We will pay that first month's rent and security. We will furnish it. We will sit with them and help them get their electricity turned on. We help them move into the apartment and get all of that set up. We also do what we call Walmart setups, which essentially is pots, pans, cleaning supplies, things to clean the bathroom, really all of the stuff that you would need to have in an apartment when you move in. So we also purchase all of those items. We will make connections. So if we have people that we have a SPOA for scattered site who does not have a care manager, we do make some of those connections to services for them. If they have a care manager, that care manager would really maintain that role with them, and we would really just be there for the housing piece. In order for us to accept a SPOA for scattered site, it's going to be the referral form, which I scrolled down and showed you guys. It's also going to be that consent, which is in here. It's going to be the functional behavioral checklist, which you as a care manager can fill out. And then I need the comprehensive for the psych eval or the psych social. Lisa and I both say best practice, we want it to be within the past year. The reality is, if you have one from the past 2 years, we'll take that. We look for the diagnosis, has to be within the document, and then how it affects their functioning. It does not have to be as clean cut as the provider saying this is how it affects their functioning. But when Lisa and I are reading through the assessment, we have to be able to piece things together to show how it affects their functioning. That is for both Medicaid and for OMH. So for scattered site, they do not have to have Medicaid. It is OMH funded. So essentially what that means is that I don't have to go by Medicaid regulations, but I have to go by OMH. So we again have to show that they need this level of housing, which we show that through that psych social or the psychiatric eval to show that they have needs in certain functional areas within their life to show that they need the support and housing. So that we definitely do need. As Lisa said, I'm just going to pull it down to the referral again. This has to be complete. If they have Medicaid, they need that for Lisa's. They do not need that for our programs and supportive. They do not need an income for supported either. We are going to highly encourage them to get income, whether that's through SSI, getting a job, temporary assistance, whatever that might be. That's not a requirement to come into our program. All of this we look to be filled out. If they're in any of these services, we want that there for a couple of reasons. It tells us if we need to address that with them and see if they need connections to it. And we really try to do team emails as much as we can and pull in everybody that works with that individual for updates and really to just surround them with the support that they need. You'll see at the bottom of the referral page, it tells you where to send it. The consent, again, just to be filled out completely, have this be in their own words, what they're looking for. You're going to want to check these boxes. This sometimes gets missed because this functional is more eye-catching, I think. So just make sure, again, they're going to have a diagnosed mental health condition. As you know, they have to have the SMI. That should always be checked. And then it's essentially if they get SSI or SSDI for mental health, you can check B. Otherwise, you're going to be checking C. You as the care manager can fill this out. In a lot of situations, we know the care manager knows them better than maybe their therapist, who they might only see once a month, right? They might see you guys more and talk to you more, whether over the phone, in person, email, whatever that might be. So feel free. The different sections are going to be the psychiatric symptoms, behavior. This is all on a scale. So let me just go back up here. So 1 is that they have no problems with it, 2 minor problems, 3 moderate, 4 severe. As Lisa said, be as honest as you can. So there's a section for behaviors, daily living skills, problem solving, interpersonal skills. You as a care manager can sign this. You can put your credentials. You can put health and care management there. This here that Lisa needs, I do not need for supported. So you can literally just take this page right out if you're sending it back over just for supported. So for that specifically, before I stop sharing the SPOA screen here, does anybody have any questions regarding scattered site supported? So this is what I'm going to do then. I'm going to stop sharing. All right, so I've stopped sharing my screen, yes? Okay. So any questions on that? Because I do want to go over with everybody what coordinated entry is, and then the programs that Kara to send that pull off of that list. So any questions for anything regarding the SPOA that Lisa and I just went over? Okay, and just so everybody understands kind of the process and how they get to Lisa and I, as she touched on earlier. So essentially, when you send your SPOA over to Linda Wright, she's the SPOA coordinator. Her job is really to review those SPOAs and make sure everything's in there. Everything is filled out completely. They have an SMI. We have the documentation. That then gets sent over to myself or Lisa, depending on what program. And then Lisa and I have to also review that. So we read through the whole thing. We ensure that everything is there. If it's not there, as Lisa said earlier, that's where we can get caught up a little bit, is there's times we have to send it back to Linda to reach back out to you as the referrer, either to get more documentation or get corrected dates or whatever it may be. So that's essentially the process. Once we get that, Lisa and I pass it on to our coordinators for the specific program. And supported, we will be reaching out within a week or two. We set up a phone screening first. We phone screen the individual, and then we set up a face-to-face assessment, where that person would meet with a coordinator. They go through the assessment. They would go onto our wait list, and then depending on what the wait is like, they would then go on our active list. And we would start working with them prior to putting them into the apartment. So them being active means that we are helping them essentially look for that apartment, and talking to them about the furniture, talking to them about getting their electricity on, all of that. So any questions on that? Okay, so the other thing I'll touch on quickly is, I don't know how many people have heard of coordinated entry, but what that is that anybody who is homeless can get onto the coordinated entry list. It's all an online intake and assessment. We have 5 people here at Ascend that can put people on that list. I think they have 2 people over at Warren County DSS that can do it, and either 3 or 4 over at Washington County DSS. So essentially what that is anyone who's homeless can sit down with somebody. They can do an intake with that person, and then they move on to the assessment. Within the assessment is a vulnerability index score. So they are essentially assessing for multiple things. If they've been a victim of domestic violence, if they are a veteran, if they have an SMI, if they're chronically homeless, there's numerous things they're assessing for, and it gives them a vulnerability index score at the end of that assessment. So we have 2 programs here in Ascend that pull from that list, and that's Cooper Street Apartments, where there's 28 permanent supportive apartments. Also housing, and that's in Glens Falls. And then we have our Housing First building, which has 18 permanent supportive apartments. That's here in Hudson Falls. For Housing First in Hudson Falls, we essentially will screen through that list, and we pull folks who are chronically homeless and have an SMI. Those are the 2 requirements to get into Housing First. It's permanent supportive. The idea is that they will be there for the rest of their lives if they choose to be there. Their rent is 30% of their income. And then at Cooper Street, it depends, because we have 28 permanent apartments and we have different lots, I guess you could say. So we have 14 apartments that are SMI. So when I pull that list, I'm pulling for the highest vulnerability score, but the person has to have an SMI. We also have 6 chronically homeless spots. So if we had one of those apartments become vacant, I would be pulling the list again. They'd have to be chronically homeless, but I'm pulling highest vulnerability score of those chronically homeless. We have 4 apartments that are for victims of domestic violence, and we have 4 apartments that are for transitional age youth, which are between the ages of 18 and 24. So with coordinated entry, one of the hardest parts is people don't know where to send people to get on the list. So you can always email me. You can email myself. I'll put my email in the chat in a minute. I can kind of direct you in the right place. We have a couple coordinators here that can do it. Myself, I can do it. And like I said, both local county DSSs can do it, but there's specific people that can do it. The other thing to know is that people tend to think that chronically homeless means they've been homeless for an accumulation of 12 months over the past 3 years. There's much more that goes into it than that. So as an example, when we had a chronic homeless opening and I had to pull the list, there were 150 people on the coordinated entry list, and only 8 of those people calculated as chronically homeless. So I just saw in the chat, sorry, I just saw a question if there was a referral for this. So there's not a referral form. So essentially it would be you as a care manager knowing the people to contact to say, can you get this individual on coordinated entry? Then the individual, they could do it over the phone or they could do it in person to get that assessment. So it's not common knowledge right now, really, who all of those people are. Again, shoot me an email, I can let you know. Some of the reason for that is because the way it's set up, it's not ideal if the person who's getting on the list is not going to continue to work with the person putting them on the list. So as a provider, when we put people on coordinated entry, we are essentially saying we are going to go in to our coordinated entry list, go into that person's face sheet once a month and give an update. So as all of you know, when you have people in outreach, for instance, for care management, right? You're trying to contact that person and you're trying to get in touch with that person. But if they kind of fall off the radar, if they're not calling you or meeting with you, then you're not going to have updates on that person. So what we tell people when we put an individual on coordinated entry, we let that individual know, if you don't contact us once a month, we can't update your face sheet. And if we don't hear from the individual for 3 months, they will come off of the coordinated entry list and they would have to reapply, step back down with that person and get on that list. Also, Ascend is not the only agency that uses coordinated entry. This is White House pulls off of coordinated entry as well for their programs. And there's many programs in Saratoga County that pull off this list as well. So once they get on this list, they are getting access to many more programs than they would if they were not on the list. The other thing to know is that you can put a SPOA in for somebody for any residential program, and you can also put them on coordinated entry. So again, they're just getting essentially access to more services, and you're kind of covering all your bases. But again, the difference here is that they have to be homeless to get on coordinated entry, and for SPOA, they have to have the SMI. So I'm going to open that up for questions now too. If anybody has questions on anything, I know it's a lot, but please ask any questions. Feel free. No question is a dumb question. So if you have anything to ask, do it. And then other people might feel comfortable asking as well. No questions? Are we that good? Lisa, we're that good.
I think so. I also put our email addresses in the chat box. So if you guys have questions later on, you can always shoot us an email, or if you have somebody you want to talk over because you're not sure if you should refer them or what program you should refer them to, you can always run that past Amber and I, and we'll point you in a direction.
Rob Mack, I see your hand up. You're one of the names I recognized.
Yeah, hi Amber.
Hi.
Hi Lisa.
Hey,
Yeah,
Rob.
so Amber, you were just saying that the client must contact you once a month to remain on coordinated entry. Is it always you in your office that they need to contact no matter who got them on the coordinated entry list? Is it always filtered down to you?
No, so essentially what we'll do sometimes is the person who puts them on the list, we might actually have contact. Like Rob, if you were to call me and say, hey, I want this person on the list, I would really look to you and say, can you shoot me an update once a month on that individual to ensure their phone number is correct, their address is correct, because they're going to use anybody pulling off that list.
Amber,
Use those current things.
can I jump in quick? It's Hannah.
Yeah.
Rob, so Christine does that for us.
Oh, okay.
Correct. But I was just curious about the process.
Oh,
So,
okay, yeah,
like-
I just want to make
So
sure
it's
that.
always directly to her, or that's all.
Yeah, so if Christine put them on the list, I would give your updates to Christine to then do those monthly updates. But again, if you had somebody that was coming into our interim room we have an interim room at Cooper Street, we have one over at Housing First. If you as a care manager have somebody that you put on coordinated entry, but also had come into our interim room, then you as a care manager, I mean, they're at our site, so we could do those updates, but we would want the care manager you know, to have communication with us. We might ask you for updates if the person's avoiding us, things like that. But it is, in theory, whoever's name is on coordinated entry, that put them on coordinated entry, it's that provider's responsibility to update that patient.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. If someone is looking to get into Eastside Center, do they need a SPOA? Yep.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
right within the SPOA, when you scroll down, I think it's on that it's either second or third page. You can check off for Eastside Center. And as Lisa said earlier, when we sat down with Linda Wright and reworked the SPOA, what we did was every single program, if you look underneath the descriptions, you're going to see little check boxes. And that tells you what has to accompany the SPOA for each program. So if you look at Eastside Center, I think they need the negative TB too, don't they, Lisa?
Yep, they do.
Eastside. So you can apply through that or for Eastside through SPOA, but you do need to do it through SPOA. Let's chat.
And you can, if you're referring to someone to either restorative or scattered site and want them to go to Eastside as well, you just check that Eastside box too. You don't have to do separate referrals
Right.
or even act, you know.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be doubling everything. So if you're gonna do restorative, Eastside Center, and ACT, you would do one psych eval from the past year. You would do one TB. So everything that accompanies that would go for all of the programs you're checking off in the SPOA.
Maureen, this was recorded, so you'll be able to re-listen and re-watch if you missed most of it.
Any other questions? So I have a question for all of you, and I don't know if you're comfortable telling us this. Put it in the chat. It's like secret that way. What's the biggest pain for you guys as care managers in doing a SPOA? Like, what is kind of the things that makes you either not do it or be like, oh, because I was an adult care manager for many years. I was a youth care manager for many years. And I know that when I knew somebody needed a SPOA, there was something within my body that was like, oh God, a SPOA, right? So just kind of, I want to talk about that a little bit. Denise, I see that you raised your hand. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead.
I think one of the things that I worry about is that psychosocial assessment, you know, knowing enough as a care manager. I think that kind of scares me a little bit. You know, I really want to get all the information that I can for that patient. So sometimes I'm not convinced that I would have everything that you would need to do it.
And you can always ask us. I will tell you, since Lisa and I have been going around and kind of sitting with care management teams and talking about this, they've definitely been more apt to pick up the phone or shoot us an email and say, hey, I read through the document. This is their diagnosis. Are you guys going to take that, right? Or this is the diagnosis, and the only thing that talks about their functioning is that they have lack of sleep and impulse control. Okay, great. Yep, that works because that's going to affect their functioning, right? If they have impulse control and poor sleep and things like that. So if you're unsure about that, feel free, definitely, you can shoot us an email and we'll let you know.
I think always communicating with the providers, the doctors, to get the documentation is always difficult because it's a lot of back and forth, but that's with every aspect of our job, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I know there's a comment here, but first I think Tracy, did you have your hand up? All right, I'll jump to the question here.
Sorry, no,
trying
I got
to-
it. I couldn't find the unmute button. Sorry.
Can't hear you, Tracy.
There. Okay. Can you hear me now? Can
Yeah.
you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I had to make my screen bigger to find the unmute button. I think the part one spell, if you're just doing that, it's not that big a deal. But when you get into the part two, for some of the more extensive aspects of spell, like an RTF or the Youth Act, especially the Youth Act, which is a little newer for us to fill out, that's just a much more extensive part of that form with a lot of paragraph writing that we have to do. That means we have to go through their charts extensively to find that information, rather than just turning in the documentation from the providers that probably have that information on it. We have to sit there and come through it and write it out. That makes sense.
And Tracy, you're referencing the children's SPOA, correct?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm referencing children's SPOA.
Okay, so, and Lisa and I primarily deal with the adult SPOAs.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so, no, but I know, because I have
The
filled
kids
it out.
is more difficult. Yeah.
Huh?
I said the kids is more difficult though. It's a lot more work.
It is, and I feel like with the kids, I think what I always ran into as a care manager is all these services, but then we didn't have providers to provide the services. So that was always the tough part, is telling people you're on the wait list, but it's going to be a year because they need people to provide the service.
Where we got denied because they wanted us to use community services before going to say like an RTF or some other thing, but there wasn't any service available. And so we'd get it kicked back because we haven't tried everything first.
Yep.
But there was availability to try, or the wait list was just so prohibitive, we weren't getting anywhere.
Yeah. So it looks like you're Jen, trying to obtain the proper referral from medical providers, such as a psych eval. So were you asking the easiest way to obtain that?
I think she was saying that was one of her hurdles as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think we found the same, like when we send things over to medical providers to get it back to us, we want it to be timely, but it's not always timely. Right? So same thing, we put in referrals, we've had to send releases numerous times sometimes to get the providers to send stuff back to us. So we definitely feel you on that. Maureen says, I have an adult clients. I agree that getting the medical to respond is difficult. Yep. Helps time therapist. I bet it does. I bet it does. So what else? Anything else that you guys feel like kind of make you hesitant to fill out the SPOA, besides that it takes time? We know it takes time. We know you're essentially, even when you're doing your end of the job, you're waiting on other people to get things to you. Anything else that makes you hesitant?
Hi, Amber, it's Jared.
Hey, Jared.
What's the average weight?
For which you
Or in general,
programs?
like for the group homes or for the apartment programs?
Yeah, loaded question, Jared.
And the only
I'm very
reason why
sorry.
I ask is because this is my little caveat with the SPOA referral. We complete this referral, which is pretty extensive, and then we submit it, and then we wait a year, and they're finally accepted or close to being accepted, except we need all new information that we just got from a year ago. So
Yeah,
we're
so
collecting
Yeah.
this stuff twice.
and one
So
of the
I'll
reasons, I was gonna say, one of the reasons Lisa and I are talking to everybody again about our programs is because we just both got beds. So Lisa got 20 satellite beds, and in supported, we got 25 scattered site beds.
Yeah.
And those are all gonna be through SPOA, so.
And we'll talk about
that's
the
the wait
others
list
here
typically
in
are long.
our next.
But it might not be quite as long because we do have those beds that we just got. We're going to be rolling out over the next, I'd say, 8 months to a year.
Yeah. So in my programming, we have immediate openings. We've been pulling people in a day or two after they've been interviewing with us. I will say historically, when they're sitting there waiting forever, it's on the referral end. It's typically sitting at the SPOA coordinator's desk waiting for something that hasn't gone through, whether it's an incorrect or incomplete or missing physician's authorization. And then by the time we get it, now their negative TB test is outside a year, and so now you have to redo that again. So it's been a long time since my programming has had a true wait list. It's been probably since COVID started that we haven't really had a wait list. We've had openings, but it's typically when we're asking for things to be redone, it's because the referral was never actually completely processed because something was missing. Because once they come onto my wait list, we don't ask for anything to be updated unless it's that physician's authorization. And if that's the case, then we're the ones reaching out to get that redone before we move them in, because we're the ones that had them sitting on the wait list, because we didn't have a spot for them. But like Amber said, we have, we're bumping up our satellite by 20 beds. So I can accommodate 78 individuals now within restorative.
And I would think for
To
scattered
find
site,
apartments.
and for scattered site, it varies. Some of it is how many apartments are full. So like right now in scattered, we have 44 beds. We're getting 25 more. So that's going to bring us up to 69 total apartments for scattered site. And sometimes what happens is we get, if the phone number on the referral is incorrect, or if the address is incorrect, so we try to call the person first. We also, if we can't get them, we'll be sending out a letter and things like that. So the other thing I would say is to just, if you have submitted a SPOA, you could always follow up with Linda, shoot her an email. This is what we have people doing a lot now. Shoot Linda an email. Hey, did you get that SPOA? Has it been sent over yet? Definitely check with her. Because if she is getting a hold of you guys as the referrer to say we need extra documentation, but you didn't get that message for some reason or whatever, always follow up. And I know it's a pain, but I think that if you put all the work into a SPOA, it's worth following up and asking Linda, where is it? How's it looking? Am I missing anything? Do they have it yet? So definitely do that. We've had some that people have contacted Lisa or myself and said, hey, I put it in January and it was like June. And so we were like, Linda, do you have that? So I mean, she's human. She gets a lot of SPOA referrals. I think sometimes it might get lost in the shuffle. So it's definitely, it would behoove you to shoot her an email and just follow up if it's been a while. Denise, do you have your hand up again, or is that from the first one? Any other questions? And Jared, to answer that question even more directly, is that our wait should not be as long. Lisa has immediate openings, and we're rolling those. We're full, but we are rolling those beds out every month. We're moving more people in, so we're going through our wait list pretty quickly. It should not be a year.
Amber, I was asking that question just prior to even me knowing that you had all these extra beds coming in, so.
Yeah, because you're right.
So that's actually some pretty exciting news that,
Yeah,
we're gonna have some openings.
It's super exciting, and you're right. I think prior to this, we did have a wait list in scattered site. It was like a year and a half. It was because it was full, and unless somebody was to get their HUD voucher, because in scattered site, the reason it can become a long wait is because when we pull them in, we pay their first month's rent, we pay their security, we furnish it, and then we act as HUD in the sense that the individual is going to pay 30% of their income towards their rent. Our agency is going to pay the 70%, just like if they had a HUD voucher. The idea is that we will work with them on following all the HUD rules. We're going to get them on the HUD list when it opens. And when they get their HUD voucher, essentially, in an ideal world, that person would kind of transition out of scattered site and now they're living fully independently in the community. But the reality is that there's many people that still need the support of supported housing. So even once they get their voucher, they would stay on our active list, but that means they're essentially taking that spot until they're ready to kind of transition out and be fully independent. So that is sometimes why it gets, what was that?
Because a lot of the times when I talk about the SPOA process with housing, with the clients and then mention the time frame, they say, oh, let's not even bother. I'll have a place to live in 6 months anyway. So this news, again, this is pretty good information to have because at least we can give the client that we're working with something more promising to look forward to as opposed to, oh, it could be about a year. And then they look at me and go, oh, I'm not even going to bother. I'll have a place to live by then.
Yeah, we hear that. So get them in. I mean, if you guys have people that you think could benefit, Lisa and I, we definitely want to see those
Thank you.
SPOAs and we want to get people in. So yeah, definitely let them know. It should be a little quicker. And I see Lisa, thank you. I see Lisa put Linda Wright's email right in the chat for you guys too. If you do need to do any follow-up on any of your SPOAs, feel free to do that. Any other questions? All right, Travis, I think we're all set with our iPad then.
This was extremely, extremely informational and thorough. Thank you
Good.
very much.
Good. And again, don't be afraid to email us. I feel like it's easier, like Travis said, you guys, it's up to you if you have your videos on. And I was like, no, I want them to see who we are because it's more comfortable that you know who you're talking to and who you're emailing. We want to answer your questions. Again, we want you guys to get the SPOAs in. We want to help as many people in the community as we can, so definitely any folks that you think could use the SPOA, get it in.
Yeah, and this is great. So we did record this as we mentioned in the beginning for folks to have as a resource after the fact. It's going to be on the website as we normally do. And I'll have this available as well for Amber and Lisa so they can do as they wish as well with it. And thank you again, both of you, for your time today and your expertise. Again, this was very valuable information. I learned some stuff as well, and I thank you again. Hope everybody has a great afternoon, and we'll talk with you all soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.